Good evening, Jessica Harmson with ABC News South Australia. There are extraordinary allegations tonight of state-sanctioned elder abuse at a government-run nursing home for people with severe dementia. Two former consultants brought in to fix problems almost a decade ago have blown the whistle, labelling the Oakden facility the worst they've ever seen. The ABC can now reveal the facility has again fallen below Commonwealth standards. Angelique Donnellan has this exclusive report.
For 9 years, Carla and Neil Barron have remained silent about what they saw at Oakden. But recent revelations about the alleged mistreatment of resident Bob Spriggs have prompted them to speak out.
There is so much emphasis now on elder abuse. But if you look at this unit, this is state-sanctioned elder abuse, and everybody's just accepting it.
The Barrons were appointed as independent consultants in 2008 to bring the federally funded but state-run nursing home up to standard after it badly failed a Commonwealth audit. They say the facility's problems ran deep.
Here, the residents were an inconvenience to the staff, and that's the way it was managed, and that went up the line.
I think, quite honestly, this is probably the worst facility overall that we came across, not only in South Australia, but in the other states that we had dealings with.
An observation reflecting the couple's 18 years of experience in dealing with nursing homes that don't meet standards. They also know from that experience how tough working in a place like Oakden can be. Dementia patients can behave violently. But it was the way that behaviour was managed that disturbed the Barrons.
I think the image that haunts me is the restraint management. A gentleman who was over 6 feet tall, who was placed on a child-sized chair, tied to it. It had wheels, and he wheeled himself up and down the hall with his legs all bent a bit. You know, it was shocking.
To change that, the Barrons recommended strategies like music to calm residents. They say their advice was mostly ignored.
I think it was the one place in all our dealings that when you walked outside into the parking lot, you wanted to cry. No, it's fine.
The physical setup of Oakden played a role too.
Well, as you can see, this is the TV room we were talking about. It's a place where they're parking residents, and this is unacceptable.
The Barrons found it was cramped and doubled as a dining room. Some residents spent the whole day here.
As good as continence pads are, again, you're feeding someone and you can smell the person next to you has defecated and they haven't been changed.
The Barrons haven't set foot in Oakden since they quit in frustration in 2008. They say this was largely due to clashes with state and federal health bureaucrats. They hope Oakden's improved, but with Bob Spriggs' family claiming his bruises were caused by inappropriate restraint, the Barrons have their doubts.
I wasn't surprised, and I just thought, oh no, here we go again.
Reporter Angelique Donnellan is at Oakden, where staff and residents' families have learnt new sanctions have been imposed on the facility. Angelique, what are the latest developments?
Yes, Jess, there is a sense of deja vu. Carla and Neil Barron were brought in when Oakden failed a Commonwealth audit and was sanctioned in 2008. Now we have learned that the federal government has again imposed sanctions on the Mac and Maclean nursing home. This is a very serious turn of events. The Commonwealth had accredited the facility last year and that was due to expire in 2019. Earlier I spoke to the CEO of the Northern Adelaide Local Health Network, Jackie Hansen, about the new sanctions. Why has the facility been sanctioned?
The Commonwealth has applied 3 sanctions to the Mac and Maclean nursing home at the Oakden campus in relation to some of the aged care standards not being met in a recent assessment.
Are they the same problems you were sanctioned for in 2008 or new problems?
They're very similar in nature, specifically 3 sanctions. One sanction relates to the loss of the government subsidy for new residents. That's for a period of 3 months. Second sanction relates to the requirement to appoint a nurse advisor to the campus for a period of 6 months. The third that was imposed relates to medication management. There has been reports of medication errors. There are also some reports where medication errors may have occurred that the staff were not reporting.
Former consultants Neil and Carla Barron have been scathing in their assessment. Do you accept that?
I was not aware of their concerns until the media this morning. Clearly, I'm very concerned about what they have said. I have zero tolerance to elder abuse. We have put a range of processes and procedures in place at Macmaclay to ensure that the residents are receiving the highest level of care every time, every day, and I have 100% commitment to that.
Can Oakden be fixed, or do you need to build a new facility?
The service absolutely can be fixed, and I'd like to say to the families who might be watching, the residents are safe at Macmaclay, and we will not be needing to move them immediately if that's a concern. The physical building is old, but yes, it can be fixed.
On Sunday morning, a 40-year-old mother of two was driving along an Adelaide road doing nothing wrong when she was killed in a car accident. It was the third fatal crash in that state involving teenagers driving a stolen car in the past 18 months. 3 boys who were originally charged with manslaughter were released from custody on Tuesday, only to be re-arrested at the front of the court on other offences. The community's outraged and the state government's promising a crackdown on young offenders, as Angelique Donnellan reports.
It was an horrific hit-and-run accident that instantly killed a mother on her way to work.
It's a real tragic incident. At the speed that that car was going, unfortunately she would have had no chance.
Lucy Paverley was on the early shift at an Adelaide nursing home when a stolen 4-wheel drive allegedly ran a red light last Sunday morning. After the crash, the offenders jumped in another stolen vehicle and sped off.
It's totally unbelievable and disgraceful how they crashed into this car at high speed, jumped into another car and left the 40-year-old woman there.
They were recklessly indifferent. They've committed a very serious crime.
Rodney's called from Fairview Park. Good morning, Rodney. What are your thoughts?
I'm just wondering about the parents in this situation, especially the 13 and 14-year-old.
On Monday, 5 teenagers were charged with manslaughter and refused bail.
The community has an expectation about these people being dealt with severely by the law. That expectation is completely reasonable, and the government intends to deliver on that.
Throwing the book at young criminals is not the answer. We need proper rehabilitative programs within the system and outside the system, and that these rehabilitative programs are made compulsory.
Lucy Paverley is the second motorist to be killed in the past year in a hit-run accident where teenagers have been charged. Nicole Tucker was also on her way to work when her car was hit by a speeding stolen ute last October. The driver was 15. He had a lengthy criminal history.
We feel a little bit like this was unjust, only maybe another year in prison, but no sentence would be adequate for somebody's life, ever.
Community outrage over Ms Tucker's death was compounded by the teenager's sentence. He is due to be released as early as April.
There will never be real justice for us, never.
The government's now trying to pass tougher sentencing laws.
And the right result is those people that committed this terrible crime are held to full account for it. They feel the full force of the law. They suffer the consequences of their actions.
Yesterday, manslaughter charges against 3 of the teenagers over the latest crash were dropped. But moments later, the trio were dramatically rearrested after their release at the youth court.
Don't need to hold his hand like that. He ain't resisting, mate. He's not resisting.
The actions of police sparked anger amongst the teenagers' family and friends.
He's not resisting. See how the law is? He's not resisting.
They must have got notified that there was 3 of them was going to get out without no charges. They don't like it, and now, well, this is how they want to make a show.
Lesser charges, including theft of a motor vehicle, have now been laid against the 3 teenagers.
We withdrew the charges against 3 of the offenders on the advice of DPP. We will have a look at how we handled this.
Sometimes that process can appear a little messy on the outside, but what's important is that we get the result.
Just locking people up is not going to solve the problem.
Aboriginal elder Torto Sansbury says not enough money is being spent on intervention and rehabilitation. 10 years ago, he advised the government on how to reduce teen offending.
The Breaking the Cycle report wasn't a multi-million-dollar request. It was a simple request coming from Aboriginal communities around South Australia to combat the crime within their community and within the community of South Australia. Unfortunately, the South Australian government has missed the opportunity and they've let not just the Aboriginal community down, but the non-Aboriginal community.
The 2007 report was prompted by the out-of-control behaviour of the so-called Gang of 49, a group of mostly Aboriginal teenagers. Some of their younger relatives are now tied up in crime.
Many of these young kids are dysfunctional and they're coming from a dysfunctional background, and we need to deal with both. We need to deal with the families as well as the offenders. None of those things are happening.
The government says it has acted on most of the report's recommendations.
At the end of the day, the young people made a decision. They made a choice, and they have to be called to account.
It is my sincere condolences to the family for the loss of his wife, the mother, and a good community member, and this should never have occurred.
The charity Angel Flight is a godsend for regional communities, transporting people by air to their medical appointments in Australia's capital cities. But last month, one of the charity's flights crashed in South Australia, killing a mother, her 16-year-old daughter and the volunteer pilot. Today, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau released its initial report, saying the plane hit the ground almost vertically just a minute after takeoff. It's not the first tragedy to befall Angel Flight. 6 years ago, Len Twigg lost his wife and daughter, and now he's demanding authorities take a look at the charity's safety standards. Angelique Donnellan reports.
She was my little angel. She was with me always. I fully believe that she's an angel in heaven. She's gone back where she came from.
Jacinda Twigg had juvenile arthritis. Each month she relied on Angel Flight to travel from Nil in country Victoria to Melbourne for treatment. This photo was taken in 2011, just before the teenager and her mother Julie boarded the flight home. They never made it. Low cloud, rain and fading light made the pilot disorientated and lose control.
2 people are dead, including the 15-year-old patient, after a Mercy flight crashed near Horsham last night.
Jacinda died at the scene, along with 69-year-old pilot Don Curnow. On the day of Jacinda's funeral, her mother Julie died in hospital.
You cried, you screamed, It was an emotional disaster. It really was.
The crash turned Len Twigg's world upside down. He stopped working full-time to look after his children.
I can understand why some people would choose not to be here anymore. Yeah, they couldn't deal with it. But I've got 3 other beautiful kids, and I wouldn't do that to them. G'day, mate.
Hey, what you writing?
No, just catching up with a bit of poetry. I've been meaning to transfer into this book for a long time.
Len dealt with his painful memories by writing poetry.
Still think about Mum, Jacinda?
Always, mate. Every day.
The painful memories are back.
Shouldn't happen once. It certainly shouldn't happen twice.
Shortly after 10 a.m. this morning, a light aircraft took off from the Mount Gambier Airport and crashed in the site behind me shortly thereafter. We understand there's 3 people on board. They are all deceased. There are no survivors.
It's certainly rekindled everything. And then I seen the photos, and I seen the photo of the mum, and the daughter, and it's the first thing I thought, oh my God, you know, she's a redhead too. How can that be possible?
16-year-old Emily Redding had anorexia. Last month, the Angel flight she was on crashed in South Australia's southeast. Her mother Tracy and volunteer pilot Grant Gilbert were also killed.
The weather wasn't brilliant, so many similarities to what happened. Other pilots had chosen not to fly into the fog.
For thousands of Australians living in the country, Angel Flight is heaven sent, helping them get to major city hospitals for treatment for free. The charity operates by connecting patients with volunteer pilots who have their own planes, but that's where Angel Flight's role effectively ends.
Angel Flight, it's a fantastic organisation, don't get me wrong. It is the best organisation and they do so much for so many people, but how can they not be responsible for this?
Angel Flight declined an interview. It's told 7:30 it relies on the Civil Aviation Safety Authority to licence and keep check on its pilots. The charity requires that volunteers must have at least 250 hours flying experience.
There's people who get a driver's licence that aren't good drivers, and there's a difference between a very good and a very average pilot. And I would suggest the minimum should be at least 500 to 750 hours.
In 2014, CASA tried to change the way charity flights operate, proposing they become more directly responsible for pilots, their training and proficiency. Angel Flight argued the changes would be too costly and force the service to shut down.
We had in excess of 60-odd submissions to the discussion paper, and overwhelmingly they were against any change.
The fact that that report has been shelved due to whether it be political influence, lobbying by the charities or whatever, that report needs to come out again.
CASA concedes the latest accident has forced a rethink.
We don't have the accident investigation report in front of us that has collected all the data from that accident, done the analysis, looked at all the causal factors. When we've all got that, if someone can look at that and say, CASA, you're at fault, then okay, that'll be a fair discussion to have.
CASA seriously needs to get off their butt and do something. There has to be stricter guidelines. Angel Flight cannot just sign someone up just because they put their hand up and they've got an aeroplane and they're prepared to pay the fuel and volunteer their time. They have to be scrutineered.
In what was a final blow, Len Twigg virtually had no claim to compensation. Angel Flight leaves insurance to its volunteer pilots.
The insurance policy was worded that if you survived the accident, you had a claim. If you were struck by a piece of the aeroplane at the accident site, you had a claim. But as a third party, there was nothing. In the end, I got $40,000. That's all my wife and daughter were worth.
It's east of Adelaide, but up near the border.
Len Twigg has sought a fresh start with his family, moving to Kingston in South Australia's southeast. He has this advice for the family left devastated by the latest crash.
It's a good place to be and think and reflect.
First thing to do, get in touch with a lawyer and caveat everything of the pilots, everything he owns, caveat so it can't be sold. If someone had said that to me, I would have said, oh, don't be stupid. Why would I want to do that? Do it. You can't not think of yourself. You have to think of you, your family, your kids, and the future.